On the other side of the hour, we're going to cover medical workers balk at mandatory flu vaccines. This is from Friday out of Reuters, and we already know that we had some victories out in New York. But as soon as the nurses had the victories out in New York, and they had to go to Albany outside of the Capitol building, over 500 people, to say no to these mandatory flu vaccinations that supposedly, according to our, chief of state, our leader, Barack Obama, didn't exist. They won in court. And then what does our leader do? Well, the next day he declares it a national emergency and a pandemic. Weird, he tried to stop the thunder of people exposing the mandatory flu vaccines out there. And then all of a sudden we're in a national emergency. We're in a pandemic. We're going to cover that on the other side. Let's take some calls. Gene in North Carolina. Gene, you're on the line.
Yes, thanks for having me back. We got cut off. We were talking about Al Gore. If it's okay, I'd like to just finish up by saying that Al Gore was on the Jay Leno show the other night, and he obviously did some damage control because they were very careful of what they discussed, and the mindset was pretty obvious that they didn't want to touch on any of the cap and trade or what was really going on with the carbon tax. I found that to be very interesting, that they're trying to use Jay Leno as a medium now because...
Well, he did more than just Jay Leno. He also did Conan O'Brien, and I also want to say he did Letterman in the same block of the week, and none of them actually want to talk about the cap and trade scheme. Gene, I got to let you go because your phone is awfully bad. I mean, we're getting a lot of feedback here. I'm sure that's going out over the air. But yeah, they always promote these people through popular television and radio and pop culture, and Al Gore has a Facebook page, and he's here to save the world, don't you know? Sean in California. Sean, you're on the line. We got Sean? Yes, sir. Going once. Going twice. All right. James in New York. James, you're on the line. Yes, sir.
Jason. This is James. I had called it earlier with Alex on the show. This is in reference to global warming. And I had heard a show in New York on public access. No, it was C-SPAN, I'm sorry, with Accuracy in the Media, where they had Mockton on there.
I've watched it. We actually played clips of it last week, and what you're talking about
is... with Morano and that?
Yeah. It was an hour and 20-minute conference, and at the end they took questions, and Lord Monkton, along with one of the Republican representative's assistants, I can't remember who he was, but he had some really good things to say as well.
No, that's not. There's three people.
Yeah, it was three people. It was a woman. It was a woman in between them. It was Lord Monkton on the left, woman, and then the right-hand guy was a Republican senator or congressman's assistant. I remember him talking about, I can't remember which one it was, but it absolutely was a representative of somebody else.
Dick Morano. But that guy was saying to Alex, his little time that I had, that he would be a great guy. He was very, I don't know how you found it, but I found him humorous. And he articulated himself in such a way that many people that don't understand what's going on or are new to this, I just think that he came across, Mockton's very stoic and English, Not don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to knock the guy. The guy, basically, the information is accurate, what he was saying. Other than that, I don't know much about him.
But what you're saying is this guy had more of an American feel, and he may be able to relate to people in this country a little bit better.
Be a good guy to have on your show, Alex's show, being that this thing is coming up, because this is a disaster.
It's a huge disaster. And we've been covering it here on this program for over 6 months. We've been talking about this upcoming Copenhagen climate treaty way back in April when we were just discussing the G20. And I kept saying, hey, they're going to have another G20 and then they're going to gear up for their global government at this climate summit. That's what it's really about. And unfortunately, my fears have been realized as I've read the bill. Go out and read the bill. You can download the PDF too. You can use these things, these ocular devices, and scan through it and find the word tax and government dozens and dozens of times. I promise you. We'll be back after this. It's the Infowarrior with Jason Bermas. We will continue to take your calls. 888-201-2244, 512-646-1776. That's 888-201-2244. We're going to go to Darren in Canada, Cliff in Colorado, Steve in Michigan, and much, much more. But first, I want to hit this article up. Medical workers balk at mandatory flu vaccines. And I was kind of surprised to even see this article out of Reuters in Los Angeles, because it does give away a lot of the facts that people are standing up to the system and saying no to these vaccinations and winning. See, you stand up, you make your voice heard, you become an actual human being instead of this thumb-sucking, fetal position excuse for, I don't even know, like you want to act like a dog or they're pets. You be a human being, you say no. You say no firmly. You get together with other human beings. They also say no. And guess what? They can't force this upon you if they don't have your consent. Remember, the New World Order likes to do things two ways. They'll either go consent, and they much prefer consent over anything, or conquest. And sometimes they'll use consent to get conquest. And that's what really 9/11 is about. They pull off their false flag terror attack. They get the consent from the American people and the world governing bodies to go attack the Middle East, and then they take it over by conquest. But they can't do that if you're informed, if you're standing up, if you're saying no. It's when you're in a haze, when you're in this fluoride-induced, mercury-driven brain trauma that they're able to pass these things and force these things upon you. Even as they are forced to wait, like everyone else, for swine flu vaccines in short supply. And they always, again, they're starting it off like the swine flu vaccine is in short supply and they're waiting for that. Thousands of nurses and other frontline healthcare workers are fighting mandatory flu immunization policies being put into place by some U.S. hospitals. You see the spin there? They start out by saying, oh, yeah, they're fighting taking the vaccine, but they're in such short supply they can't wait for the H1N1 vaccination. And then they hype up that 3,900 people in the United States, many of them children supposedly, have died from the swine flu. Totally made up number. I promise you, that is a made up number. If they had 3,900 cases of children and the elderly dying from swine flu, you would see it on the news every night, another face, another body. Dozens of bodies. But you don't see that because this is the hype machine, the control mechanism. Most health experts and much of the public agree that medical personnel, as a rule, should be vaccinated. See, they only give you one side of the argument in this. An infected nurse or technician can pass on a virus that could be deadly to a frail patient. Yes, it's about saving the patients. Let's see. They're saying that 40% of U.S. healthcare workers have gotten the seasonal vaccination. The question now dividing, see, and this is another false premise. Are you ready for this one? The question now dividing the medical community is whether it makes more sense to force health workers to get flu shots, or, now here's the other alternative, we're going to force you to get the shot, or we're going to coax them into rolling up their sleeves voluntarily. Notice what's not on the agenda, them not getting the shot. See, you're always going to take the shot. The question is whether we're going to force you to take the shot or we're going to convince you to take the shot. It never comes into play that they shouldn't be taking the shot. Let's see. Proponents of the mandatory route adopted a growing number of hospitals saying voluntary efforts largely have fallen short. Yeah, because the voluntary efforts have people who say, why would I want to put mercury in my body? Why would I want to take a weakened form of a virus I don't have? And again, the H1N1 virus isn't even the H1N1 virus. It is 3 separate types of flu strains. It's the H1N1, it's the H5N1, and it's a human flu strain all combined together. We're going to finish up this article on the other side and take your calls at the Infowarrior with Jason Bermas. Remember, you can get the podcast after the show if you missed any of the program over at theinfowarrior.com. Back after this.